Anya stood in front of the house, her eyes full of tears, holding only a hospital folder and a small plastic bag. Her hands shook as she quietly said to Yor, "I'm pregnant." She hoped he would smile, maybe hold her or say something kind, but Yor just looked at her like a stranger. His face was cold, with no emotion. Then he spoke in a calm but cruel voice. "This isn't the life I planned. I'm marrying someone who won't embarrass me." Naya's heart broke into pieces. Before she could say another word, he turned his back and walked inside. The gate clicked shut behind him. He locked it, just like that. She didn't even have a place to go. The sky was dark, and rain started to fall. Big, heavy drops. Within minutes, she was soaked. Her clothes clung to her skin, and her feet were cold. She placed one hand on her belly, where her unborn child was growing. She whispered softly, "It's okay, baby. I'm still here." But inside, she felt lost and scared. Yor, the man she loved and trusted, had left her without thinking twice. As the rain poured harder, she stood there alone in the night. No one came to help. No umbrella. No hug. No apology. Just silence and pain. Her heart ached not only for herself, but for the little life inside her. She had done nothing wrong. All she did was love the wrong person. And now, she had no home, no money, and no one to turn to. But deep inside her, something strong began to rise. She didn't cry out loud. She didn't beg. She just stood in the rain, holding her belly, feeling every heartbeat inside her. That night, something changed in her. Her world had fallen apart, but she refused to give up. She made a silent promise to her baby. No matter how hard life became, they would survive together, one step at a time. Nia had no home, no family nearby, and nowhere to sleep. That night, after being left out in the rain, she walked through the streets, cold and tired. Her feet were swollen, her clothes still wet. She kept one hand on her belly, feeling the small movements of her baby inside. Every gentle kick reminded her that she wasn't alone and that she couldn't give up. She kept walking until she found a quiet corner at the edge of a busy market. Behind a fisherman's stall, there was a little space, hidden by a pile of old ropes. It wasn't clean or safe, but it was all she had. She sat down on the cold ground and leaned against a wall. Her body was aching. She hadn't eaten since morning. Her mind was full of fear and questions. "How did I end up like this?" she whispered. But as tired as she was, she couldn't sleep. She held her belly and whispered, "Don't worry, baby. I'm here." Tears rolled down her face, but she wiped them quickly. She knew she had to be strong, not just for herself, but for the little life growing inside her. The next morning, an old woman selling fruits and vegetables nearby noticed her. Her name was Auntie Tewa. She had seen many people come and go in that market, but something about Naya touched her heart. Without asking too many questions, she walked over and gently handed Naya a small bowl of hot soup. "Eat this," she said. "You need strength." Naya looked up, surprised, and with shaky hands took the bowl. The warmth of the soup made her eyes tear up again, this time not from pain, but from kindness. Then Auntie Tewa brought out a thin mat and placed it beside the ropes. "Rest here," she said softly. "Tomorrow you start over." That night, lying on the mat under the open sky, Naya looked up at the stars. The ground was hard, the air cold, but her heart felt a tiny bit lighter. She held her belly again and whispered, "You'll never sleep on the street like this. You'll never beg for love, not even from me. I'll give you everything." It wasn't just a promise. It was a vow. No matter how small her beginning looked, she had made a decision. She would rise. For her child, for herself, for the future she now believed she could still build. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly turned into months. Naya did not have much, but she refused to sit and do nothing. She began making small bottles of coconut oil by hand, using what she had learned from her mother before life changed. Every morning, she would sit by the roadside, under the hot sun, calling out gently to passers-by, hoping someone would stop and buy. She wasn't just selling oil, she was trying to survive, trying to feed her son, baby Chemo, who had now become her entire world. Some days were hard, some days she sold nothing, but she never gave up. With a cloth tied around her back, she carried Chemo everywhere she went. When he cried, she fed him. When he laughed, she smiled back. Even if her heart was tired, she stayed strong because she had no choice. One afternoon, the sun was high and the street was busy with people. Naya sat on her small stool, feeding a hungry child beside her stall. Not Chemo, but a little boy who had come crying with an empty stomach. She tore a piece of her bread and shared it without thinking. Just then, a man walked by. He wasn't like the others. He had kind eyes and a camera hanging from his neck. His name was Dami. He had been walking through the village, taking pictures of people, the market, and everyday life. Dami paused when he saw Naya. Something about the way she smiled at the child, the way she fed him before herself, touched his heart. He quietly lifted his camera and took a photo, not to embarrass her, but to show the world something beautiful. Naya didn't even notice. She was too focused on the little boy's hungry eyes. Later that day, Dami posted the picture online with just 5 words. Strength looks like this. He didn't expect much, but within hours, the photo spread. Thousands of people saw it. They shared it. They cried. They asked, "Who is this woman? How can we help her?" Naya had no idea any of this was happening. She just packed up her stall like every evening, holding chemo in one arm and her small basket in the other. But that single photo, taken in silence, was about to open doors she never even knew existed. Her life was about to change, not because she begged, but because someone saw her heart and shared it with the world. One quiet morning, as Naya sat at her small wooden bench arranging her coconut oil bottles, a gentle knock came on the side of the bench. She looked up, surprised. Standing there was a woman in neat clothes, holding a folder and wearing a warm smile. Naya wasn't used to strangers looking at her with kindness. For a second, she thought the woman was a customer, but then she said something that made Naya freeze. "Are you the lady from the photo, the one with the child and the bread?" Naya slowly nodded. She was unsure of what was happening. The woman introduced herself as a marker. She explained that she worked with a women's foundation that supported single mothers and small businesswomen. They had seen Naya's photo online, and her story had touched their heart. A marker said they had been looking for her for weeks, asking around the market and nearby stalls. Naya listened carefully, holding baby chemo close. A marker told her about a special training program for women who wanted to grow their small businesses. It was called a business incubator. They helped women learn how to manage money, grow their brand, and connect with bigger markets. At first, Nia didn't know what to say. Nobody had ever offered her something like this before, but something inside her said yes, not just for herself, but for her child. She couldn't afford to waste this chance. The next week, Nia started the training. It wasn't easy. She had to carry chemo with her every day. While the other women took notes with both hands, Nia balanced her notebook with one hand and held chemo with the other. But she didn't complain. She stayed focused. She asked questions. She stayed up late reading and learning. She wanted to prove that she belonged there, that she deserved this opportunity. One day during a class, someone asked her if she felt lucky to be helped. Nia smiled and shook her head gently. "This isn't charity," she said quietly. "It's investment, and I always give returns." Everyone in the room fell silent. They could see she meant every word. Nia was not just learning business skills, she was building a future. Slowly, step by step, with baby chemo by her side, she was rising from the ground that once broke her. She wasn't waiting for anyone to save her. She was saving herself. And this time, the door of her life wasn't being slammed shut. It was opening wide. Naya's small bottles of coconut oil, once lined up on an old wooden bench, slowly began to travel farther than she ever imagined. It started with one tourist asking to buy more. Then another came, saying they had seen the oil in a guest house. Word spread, and soon, her products were being displayed in tourist gift shops across town. The labels were simple, but neat, with the name Chemo Roots written boldly, named after her son, the reason she never gave up. The oils didn't stop at gift shops. One day, a lady from a nearby spa bought a few bottles. The next week, she returned with a bigger order. "Our clients love it," she said. That opened new doors. More spas reached out. Then came a small export order, something Naya had never dreamed of. Her little business, born out of pain and survival, was now growing beyond the market store where it all began. But even as her brand expanded, Naya stayed quiet and humble. She didn't scream her success. She focused on quality, on honesty, and on making sure her story inspired others who were still in the struggle. She used part of her profits to help young mothers like her. She created a small group where women could learn, share, and support one another. Slowly, her name became respected, not just for her products, but for her heart. And though she was building something beautiful, she never forgot that night. The rain, the locked gate, and those painful words, "You're inconvenient." That memory didn't make her bitter, it made her strong. She didn't wish bad for Yor or anyone who hurt her, but she knew life had a way of circling back. Naya understood something deeply. Revenge wasn't hers to chase. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone. The best justice was living well, building strong, and helping others rise with her. And that's exactly what she did. From a mat behind a market stall to boxes stamped for export, from a tearful night in the rain to a thriving business named after her son, Naya's journey was living proof that strength isn't loud. It's steady, quiet, and full of purpose. She was no longer just the girl with the hospital folder. She was a businesswoman, a mother, a leader, and she had only just begun. 3 years had passed. Naya's life had completely changed. She was no longer the young woman begging for a place to sleep. Now, she was a proud business owner, a mother, and a voice for women who had faced hard times. When she got an invitation to speak at a charity gala for women entrepreneurs, she felt nervous but excited. It was her first big event, and she wanted to show others that no matter how low life takes you, you can rise again. She wore a simple but beautiful Ankara dress. It wasn't flashy, but it carried meaning. Her natural hair was neatly styled, and her son, Kimo, now 3 years old, held her hand tightly. Cameras flashed as they walked the red carpet. People turned to admire her grace. She didn't need diamonds to shine. Her story, her strength, and her presence made her glow. Inside the hall, music played softly, and guests were sipping drinks and chatting. As Naya walked toward her table, something unexpected happened. A glass slipped and shattered on the ground. A man stood frozen, staring at her like he had seen a ghost. It was Yor. He looked very different now, older, tired, no longer full of pride and big dreams. He was just a junior manager, not the big success he once promised to be. Standing next to him was a woman with a loud voice, his wife. She was shouting at a waiter over a small mistake, drawing attention. People around them looked uncomfortable. Yor's eyes didn't move from Kimo. The little boy looked so much like him. The same eyes, the same nose. It was impossible to deny. In that moment, Yor knew. He had walked away from his own blood, from a child who never asked to be born, but was born strong. Naya stood tall, holding Kimo's hand. She didn't need to say anything. Her silence was louder than any insult or speech. She nodded politely and walked past him, leaving Yor standing in shock, surrounded by the pieces of the glass he had dropped and the life he had thrown away. Justice had spoken, not with anger, but with grace. Yor followed Nia out of the hall, calling her name softly, like someone who had just woken up from a dream. His hands were shaking, and his face looked pale. He gently touched her arm and asked, Is that my son?" His voice cracked. He didn't sound proud. He sounded scared, unsure, like a man who had just realized what he had lost. Naya turned to face him. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. Her eyes were calm, but firm, like a river that had seen many storms. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I told you. That day, in front of your gate, I told you I was pregnant." Yor looked down, ashamed. "I didn't know you were serious. You thought I was inconvenient." Naya cut in. "You said I would embarrass you." Yor swallowed hard. He couldn't look her in the eyes anymore. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "Please, let me be part of his life. I want to know him. I want to be a father." Naya looked over at Kimo, who was now playing nearby, smiling and full of joy. The same joy she had fought so hard to protect. She turned back to Yor and asked just one simple question. "Are you doing this for Kimo, or because your life isn't what you thought it'd be?" Yor was silent. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His eyes said everything. He wasn't there because of love. He was there because of regret, because he didn't get the life he had planned, because maybe he thought claiming Kimo would fix something broken inside him. Naya sighed. She wasn't bitter anymore, but she wasn't foolish either. She had raised Kimo with love, with struggle, with dignity. She had fed him when she was hungry, held him when she was tired. And now that the boy was strong, smart, and kind, this man wanted to appear and play father. She shook her head slowly and walked away, saying nothing more. Yor stood there, alone, his heart full of questions he should have asked years ago. Kimo ran to her and held her hand. "Mama, who was that man?" She smiled, brushed his hair gently and said, "Just someone who didn't see what was right in front of him until it was too late." Yor was in the office early that morning, sipping his coffee and trying to impress his father-in-law, the company's top manager. Everything seemed normal. until a group of serious-looking men in suits walked into the boardroom with files and briefcases. Whispers began to spread like wildfire. Something big was happening. Yor leaned forward, confused, watching as one of the men handed a thick envelope to his father-in-law. The old man's face changed the moment he opened it. He looked shocked, then angry, then completely silent. Yor quickly walked over to peek at the document, and what he saw made his hands go cold. It was a takeover notice. The company had been bought, and not just by anyone, by KR Holdings. Yor's heart pounded. KR, that sounded so familiar. Then the papers revealed the full name, Chemo Roots Holdings, the same brand that had been making waves in the beauty and skincare world, the same brand that started from a roadside stall, the same brand owned by the woman he had once kicked out into the rain. He kept flipping the pages. His eyes froze on the last line. His lips moved, but no sound came out. It read, effective immediately, the new board chair, Nia K. Adama. He felt dizzy. Nia was the owner. She had bought the company. She was now the boss. His legs shook as he sat down slowly. He could barely breathe. The woman he had once called inconvenient had not only survived, she had built an empire strong enough to buy the very company he worked for. His hands were trembling as he dropped the paper. Nia walked in quietly a few moments later, confident, graceful, and calm. She wore a simple black suit, no loud colors, no jewelry, just purpose. Everyone stood up, out of respect, except Yor. He couldn't move. He just stared at her, as if seeing her for the very first time. She didn't look at him for too long. She simply nodded to the board and took her seat. From that moment, Yor knew the life he had thrown away had grown into something too powerful to ignore, and the woman he had abandoned had become the one person with the power to decide his future. After the boardroom shock, Yor didn't waste time. He showed up outside Nia's office the next day with flowers in one hand and a letter in the other. He said he was sorry, truly sorry. He said he had changed, that he now understood everything he had thrown away. He even cried, real tears, in front of everyone. Some people watching felt pity, others shook their heads. But Nia wasn't moved, not because she hated him, but because she had healed. She looked at him kindly, but there was a clear wall between them now, not a wall of anger, but of peace and understanding. She told him softly but firmly, "You are not my enemy. You're just someone I no longer need in my life." He offered to take care of Chemo. He said he wanted to be a father, but Nia asked him a question that made him pause. She asked, "Are you doing this for Chemo, or because you regret your choices?" He didn't answer, because deep down he knew. It wasn't just about Chemo. It was about trying to fix his own broken pride. Nia didn't push him away completely. She wasn't seeking revenge. She had no interest in seeing him suffer. That part of her life was closed. But she had new priorities now. Her son, her business, her peace. So she made an offer. A mature, calm one. She said she would create a trust fund for Chemo's future, to make sure he would never lack anything. She would even allow Yor to visit, but only under one condition. Not guilt, not pity, but truth. She told him, "If you can be honest, if you can show up for Chemo because of love and not regret, the door will open. But if not, I won't force it. I won't let my son grow up begging for love." With that, Nia stood and walked away. And Yor, for the first time in years, realized something important. She wasn't trying to win. She had already won. Not with revenge, but with peace, growth, and clear boundaries. That was the real power she had gained. At the grand hall filled with successful women from around the world, Nia walked confidently onto the stage. Cameras flashed. The crowd clapped. She wore a simple dress, but her presence lit up the entire room. This was the Women in Business conference, and Nia, once a girl with no place to sleep, was now the keynote speaker. Her journey had become famous. Her brand, Chemo Roots, was now a global name in natural skincare. People looked up to her, not just for her business success, but for her strength, her calm power, and the grace with which she carried her past. After her inspiring speech about building from nothing, the host leaned forward with one final question. "Nya, what's the one thing that kept you going when everything seemed hopeless?" The room went quiet. Anya paused, then smiled softly and turned her eyes toward the front row, where Chemo sat proudly, clapping with the biggest grin on his face. Her voice was steady as she answered, "The door they shut on me gave me time to build my own house." At that moment, the entire audience rose to their feet. The applause was loud, some even teared up. Phones were lifted. Her words were already being shared online, turned into quotes and video, and somewhere in the crowd, standing quietly at the back, was Yor. He wasn't clapping, he was just standing still, watching. His eyes were not on the stage, but on the little boy in the front row. The boy who looked just like him, smiling with pride at his mother. The boy he had once called inconvenient, without even giving him a chance. Now he saw clearly what he had missed. Yor had power once. He had plans, he had pride, but none of it had led him here. Now Naya's name opened doors that used to be closed to women like her. She had built her success without stepping on anyone, without shouting, without revenge, just with quiet focus and fire in her heart. She didn't just rise, she created a path for others. And as the lights dimmed and people lined up to meet her, one man stood alone in the crowd, knowing he could never be part of that light again. Because she didn't just win, she transformed, and she never looked back. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll without sharing it. Tag someone who needs to hear this today. And remember, when they shut the door on you, build your own house. Drop a heart if you believe in second chances.